Now I've traveled to the area known as Mort Homme and Cote 304, which are the names of two hills 8 miles west of the ossuary of Verdun and about 7.5 miles away from the city of Verdun. This area was controlled by the Germans prior to the battle, or near to, and it gave them the opportunity for a large flank attack on Verdun prior to the battle. And so this is an area that, as you drive up to it, is just rolling farm fields. No offense to the people of Chattancourt, the village down the hill, but the understanding of how many soldiers died to keep their village from being possessed by the Germans is horrifying. And although we're not in the heart of the fortress zone of the Battle of Verdun, this part of the battle is just as important. And just like before, you kind of pass out of this artillery-drenched death zone for a little while on your way here, and then you come back into it, and the terrain immediately reflects this complete destruction. And so this is Le Mort Homme, which in French means the dead man. The hill was named long ago the Dead Man, but ironically, that's what it was called in the First World War. And again, control of hilltops like this meant the difference between observing artillery fire or flanking the city of Verdun in the battle. It'll probably be hard because it's worn, but in my video here I'm going to zoom in on this picture, and that shows this area. You can see the trenches running through it and the crazy devastation here. The name Dead Man's Hill is still synonymous with the horrors of the Battle of Verdun and of World War I in general. More than 100 years ago, thousands of young men from France and Germany fought bitterly over the two peaks of this hill. The enemy trenches were often separated by only a few yards. A lot of the soldiers on both sides of the front were the same. The order to kill, the ever-present danger of injury or death, fighting for survival in mud-filled trenches and agonizing thirst. Here we are one with the earth. The machine gun is shooting too high. The noise keeps us awake. We're trying to use hand grenades to knock out their machine gun. They're keeping watch, though. We can't do it. Dawn is breaking. The man near me is screaming, but we managed to help him crawl back into our trench. I can't hear the shell blasts anymore or the groaning of the wounded. It all just sounds the same. We're so tired. It's a day like so many others outside Verdun, and yet we held the hill and didn't leave until it was completely in our hands. It was hard and grim. This is how one member of a German reserve infantry regiment experienced the unimaginable human catastrophe of the spring of 1916 on the slopes of Dead Man's Hill. Now, I've talked a lot about the Battle of Verdun as I've walked the trails and did my preparation to come here. The Battle of Verdun is huge in the sense that I've mentioned many times that there are stories in every one of these shell holes, but in many ways this particular part of the battle outside of these fortress zones was done just hand to hand and machine to machine. It's some of the worst fighting in the Battle of Verdun, which is hard to imagine were done in these woods here. In fact, crazy as it sounds, I would even say the ground here is more torn up than some of the other places I saw. And that means that in the annals of modern infantry combat, there's places like Iwo Jima and Hamburger Hill and Dead Man's Hill here in France. This is definitely one of those places. What's shocking about a battle like this, fought in a place like this, is that in any other time, this hill would be worth a few cows, and the lumber that was on it. But tens of thousands of men died on this ground I'm on to control just an observation point. And if the futility of the First World War is illustrated anywhere, it's here. Just the incredible human effort thrown into a place like this for seemingly futile means. Now, that's not to take away from the heroics of the French and German soldiers here. I simply mean that this ground is just some hill. When you walk up to it, it's no different than 15 other hills I passed. You can't even tell the difference until you get onto it. It's just where the limit of advance happened to be. And that's war. Unfortunately, it's a real estate game. And here it's certainly illustrated. This is what the hill looked like then. Just a desert, like a windswept desert. See the trench running through there? And this is another example of what the French call red zones. Areas that were so shell-shocked by this war that they're not reclaimable. It says on the sign around the corner that anywhere here, if you dig down just a foot or two, you immediately start digging up human remains and explosives. So in the archaeological sense, that's fascinating because it means that this area is still super dangerous. If we were to reclaim an area like this, the way I would imagine most people would do it is you'd run a bulldozer through this ground and build something. And here, aside from the very serious risk of disturbing human remains constantly, you also run the risk of disturbing 155 millimeter artillery shells and phosgene gas shells and chlorine gas shells and grenades. And that's kind of unacceptable. I don't know how long the French have estimated it will take for this ground to recover enough to be usable again. Maybe 200 years. Maybe longer. Although nature is resilient, obviously the plants and birds still come here and grow just fine, but there's so much metal in the ground that it's dangerous to till. And I think that these were high-rise farm fields at that time. It wasn't a forest. This was grass, which is kind of what it looks like once you leave this red zone. And so if you ever look at an aerial shot of France, one way to identify the Western Front are these strips of forest. We're going to head into this area now, which is considered some of the nastiest fighting on the Western Front ahead of me. It's funny because I've been a soldier my entire life, and every soldier wants to be part of a good unit. And if soldiers have been in combat, they'll talk about their experiences. And there's some bit of braggadociousness and the kind of action you saw that happens sometimes. But up here, I think that the soldiers that survived this, if they survived it, just walked away stunned. This wasn't the kind of fun fighting that most of us live through and then get to brag about. This was hell. Absolutely disgusting. The way this hill was described in books I've read is that there would be hands and faces sticking up from the mud in these hills right here. And soldiers would have to sleep on top of dead bodies, and that the area was foul to a level that's hard to imagine. Again, I've said that a lot of times on this trip, but that's a skull right there. This is the trench map of this area. Mort Homme. I'm somewhere in there. I'm a bit frustrated that I'm here on a windy day today, where it was snowy yesterday, because I know the wind is affecting the audio on my phone, but hopefully you can hear me. And I will say that the windswept nature of really being here adds an air to the area that makes it a little more spooky. What's interesting too about the nature of tourism, and certainly war tourism, is this area seems to me to be kind of the back nine of the Battle of Verdun tourist scene. Most people go to the ossuary and there's museums. Here I had to drive for 25 minutes away from the main area and just take some weird dirt road by a farm and come up here. And that usually tends to be the way places like this are. I don't want to say to get to the really good stuff you have to go off the beaten trail, but that's certainly what it feels like here. So this area I'm walking into was replanted by the Forest Service. The French government was trying its best to encourage people to return to the land, but if you imagine this land in the 1920s, you can still imagine, gear everywhere, dead people, remains, barbed wire, all the detritus of battle existed up here, and there's pictures of that. There's tons and tons of pictures of that. But battle is the highest form of human drama I've ever experienced. But post-battle is one of the lowest. When you see rusted machines and the wastage that war represents, it's depressing. And an area like this would have been all of that. I've kind of stopped narrating the frequency of shell craters because I've walked so many of these trails in the last 2 days, but nothing stops here. Every single piece of this ground is wrecked. There's a trench right there running down the hill, and everywhere around it is completely wrecked by shells. I would say this doesn't even look that recovered, honestly. I don't see gear, but unless it was intentional to make this so cut down, this area is still creepy. Truly feels dangerous here. It feels different. I don't expect to see big concrete pillboxes up here. Nothing like that. This would be like an area where the Germans tried to flank through that wasn't so well defended, which is why they tried to do it here. And so the only way to stop them was to throw manpower and artillery against them, and both sides did that here. Giant crater right there. There was no pre-planned defense. This is an area where they had to maneuver against each other and simply fight it out on these slopes for 9 months, while the Germans tried to flank the main defenses at Verdun. Here, I get the sense that I should stay on the trail a little bit more. And I don't see anything, so it's not like, oh, watch out, there's a grenade or something. But I had the nice ladies at the visitor center warn me, and this doesn't seem very recovered. There's fences here and there, and on the sign right at the beginning of this trail it said it's all out here, right under this brush. If you were to dig down with a shovel, you would only go a foot down and you would immediately start finding artifacts of every type. Now I know that people have been walking along this trail for 100 years, so I'll take my chances. And like I said, in a different area, the Graves Commission came through here and recovered what they could to take back to Douaumont ossuary, but it still feels Tolkien-esque in here. Not to overuse that metaphor, but the dead marshes definitely feels that way in here. I would not walk through here on Halloween. There's trenches to my left through the trees. I can see deep trenches there. Shell holes full of water. I suspect that Ukraine will have red zones soon. Whenever that war stops, they're going to have similar problems. The German position on Dead Man's Hill in summer 1917 consisted of frontline trenches and 1st and 2nd intermediate positions. This system stretched back for a total of 2,000 meters. In mid-August 1917, heavy French artillery fire began deliberately to weaken the German defenses. All hands were put to work repairing the trenches. The car must be back up on the top of the hill there. Dead Man's Hill, Mort Homme, Cote 304. Some of the most vicious fighting of the First World War happened in this little valley.